Hello, everybody. My name's Jim, and this is a spoiler-free review of Skin of the Sea by Natasha Bowen. Before I start the official review, I have to give this novel credit for getting me into the fantasy genre in the first place. I started with The Lies of Locke Lamora and Kings of Paradise and found that I was not mentally prepared at all for those novels. As somebody who is just starting to read again, and as someone who isn't as familiar with fantasy, I found them a tad overwhelming. Um, and as I mentioned in my newbie tag video, my collection mostly consists of historical fiction right now. And because Skin of the Sea provided a nice blend of historical fiction with fantasy, I was able to digest it a little bit better and subsequently receive more enjoyment from it. So I do appreciate this book for, actually being my entry into fantasy, and I hope to return to those two books that I DNF'd last year, and give them another try now that I'm more familiar with, the themes and, things like that. So this is the story of Simi, a Mami Wata, or mermaid, whose purpose is to collect the souls of those who die at sea and send them peacefully into the afterlife. Because the story is set during the slave trade, the souls of bodies thrown from the slave ships are the souls that the Mami Wata are forced to collect. But it isn't until a young man named Kola, who is still alive, is thrown from one of the ships that Simi decides she is going to break the rules to save him. So she takes him to an island, she resuscitates him, and it creates a ripple effect. And I don't mean for that to be a pun. I know that this is an aquatic novel, but that was that was unintended. Whereby her rule breaking also puts her creator Yamoja in danger of being punished by Olodumare, who is the ultimate Orisha, the creator of everything. Now, Olodumare does not accept an audience from just anyone, right? So it's now Simi's job, with the help of Kola, to find and present a gift to Olodumare to explain the situation and ask for forgiveness for breaking the rules. But you learn really quickly in the novel that at this point, Olodumare is tired of the selfish, squabbling human race. The Mami Wata were not supposed to be created in the first place, so Yamoja and Simi know that this is going to be a hard sell. And it's only made more difficult by the fact that now not only does Kola, who is a human, know what Simi is, but there are other Orishas who may try to intercept their attempt at forgiveness. Speaking of the Orishas, this novel is deeply saturated in West African mythos and religious figures, which, from what I've seen when looking for a fantasy novel to read, it wasn't common. The primary cast was comprised mostly of Yoruba people who spoke in the language from time to time and participated in customs that I was unfamiliar with, and was honestly, I was thrilled to learn about it. There were a few comments on Goodreads, though, speaking about the treatment of some characters and culturally specific elements of this novel, and while I would rather dip into that in a later video, I will say that some may find a few errors or misrepresentations in this novel, because these are, in fact, real religious figures used in this novel, and these religious figures are worshipped today, like right now. The folklore and the religion of West Africa is something that I am personally unfamiliar with, and while I can honestly say that I enjoyed reading about them here and Googling, for more information, I think it is important to make that mention, just as it could turn out to be a potential negative for some readers. Simi's transformation story is a bit of a side plot that you may either love or hate. It's spelled out through a series of flashbacks, but personally, I really enjoyed learning about her becoming a Mami Wata and how she adapts to the world around her now that she is a Mami Wata. She is able to transform between, being a mermaid and being a human, but it isn't some easy shift. I guess. There's a lot of pain that comes with it, and, there's pain in her past, but to me, she is certainly a character to root for, and I think some of the characters around her were better, but, like, I didn't find Simi boring at all. Now, while I'm a new reader, I am aware of the term purple prose, and I would say that this book does tend to lean a little bit lavender, a little bit violet, what I mean? So, um, personally, I am in the camp where I don't mind as long as it makes sense. I found the writing personally to be, really beautiful and poetic, quite frankly, and I think Bowen did a phenomenal job with action sequences as well and moving them along. Um, but as far as the Purple Prose goes, this is an aquatic novel. It just felt very fluid. It kind of fit the vibe that I believe that she was going for. The only fault that I found with the Purple Prose is that she had a tendency to re-describe certain things that I already knew. So, for example, one thing that really stuck out to me was the word silver was used as a descriptor so many times that whenever it showed up in the novel, it briefly took me out. I don't know if there is some additional significance to the color silver, but I personally could have used less of it. And I started calling it Silver Prose just because of all of the mentions of silver in the novel, especially in the first half. There is a tinge of insta-love in this novel. I believe it's YA, so that could be why. But I think what was more jarring was how quickly Cola transitioned from someone who came across huffy and puffy and immature to someone who was like competently taking the lead and making wise decisions. The blurb itself says that he knows more than he probably should, and he certainly does. That's not a lie, but it was just surprising to see him be so logical after being a little bit bullheaded, if I'm being honest. And just to wrap this up, probably the thing I enjoyed the most, especially from a character angle, is that the female to female relationships felt so refreshing and so healthy, and it felt very intentional for Bowen to write them this way. They didn't feel like interactions that Simi needed to have just because she's the main character and needs to talk to people. There was some extra, care in it, and I think that extra care is why I adored one of the female characters in Skin of the Sea the most. And I wish I could talk about her in more detail here, but I can't. I'll have to wait until I do a spoiler review for this book, which I plan to do. I want to take comments from Goodreads and maybe even here if you have them. Actually, no, no, no. Don't leave your comments here because I don't want to spoil people in a non-spoiler review. But if I can find some that specifically talk about the female relationships, then I'll use those kind of as a catalyst to talk about it. But if I don't, then maybe I can gush about it on my own because even I didn't write about it in my initial review, and shame on me for that. But yeah, until then, if you're at all interested in purchasing Skin of the Sea and reading it for yourself, please click the Goodreads link provided in the description and select your format and retailer of your choice from there. Otherwise, I've been Jim. You've been great. Happy reading.